Every time you point a finger of blame at someone else, 3 fingers point back at you. This ancient wisdom reveals a profound spiritual truth about responsibility that most people never truly understand. It's like stepping into a mirror that reflects your authentic self. I found this in my exploration of Manly P. Hall's 10 Basic Rules for Better Living. I discovered why taking responsibility might be the single most powerful spiritual practice you can adopt. The final rule, never blame others for your mistakes, contains a transformative secret that changed my entire approach to life's challenges. Welcome back, beautiful people. You may not realize it yet, but there is a reason you're watching this video. It could very well change your life. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever noticed how some people seem trapped in the same patterns of suffering, despite constantly changing their external circumstances? They move to new cities, start new relationships, or switch careers, yet somehow find themselves facing the same conflicts, the same disappointments, the same emotional wounds. There's a profound spiritual reason for this repetitive cycle, one that Manly P. Hall illuminates with remarkable clarity in his wisdom. Blame functions as an invisible spiritual barrier that prevents authentic growth and transformation. It creates an energetic prison with walls of resentment and floors of denial, confining our consciousness to lower vibrational states. Like heavy chains binding us to a massive stone, when we point fingers at others for our circumstances, we remain shackled to repeating patterns of suffering. Hall's concept of karmic stagnation reveals how blame creates a spiritual debt requiring reconciliation. When we externalize responsibility for our misfortunes, we misalign ourselves with universal law, forfeiting opportunities for spiritual evolution. As Hall explains, we are in trouble because we have not made constructive use of the power and abilities that we received as a birthright. This manifests visibly in our relationships as recurring conflicts and deepening resentment. Hall observes that others can hurt us only while our own inner life is too weak to sustain us in the presence of trial or test. The individual who consistently attracts unappreciative partners or finds unfair bosses across multiple jobs is experiencing reflections of unresolved internal patterns, not coincidences. Eastern traditions have long recognized blame as a form of attachment, like a locked door we refuse to open, binding individuals to their suffering and preventing inner peace. Blame serves the ego's desperate attempt to preserve its identity, protecting us from facing our shortcomings. Embracing responsibility is the key that unlocks these chains of karmic debt. When we take ownership of our circumstances, we align with the universal law of cause and effect. No longer fighting against the current of cosmic law, we flow with it, allowing spiritual energy to move freely through our lives, opening doorways to new possibilities for healing and growth. As this spiritual energy begins to flow more freely through our consciousness, a profound truth emerges from the shadows. The people who most consistently trigger our frustration are often reflecting aspects of ourselves we've worked hardest to deny. This mirror of consciousness represents perhaps the most challenging yet transformative aspect of Hall's teachings. When we look closely at our conflicts with others, we frequently discover they're projecting onto the external screen of our lives the very qualities we've refused to acknowledge within. Our minds are remarkable storytellers, crafting intricate narratives that justify our blame of others. We construct elaborate explanations for why someone else is entirely at fault, complete with supporting evidence that seems irrefutable. These self-protective mechanisms operate with such subtlety that they easily bypass our conscious awareness. The more convincing our story about another's culpability, the more vigilant we must become about examining our own contribution. Hall identifies this as the blind spot phenomenon, our remarkable ability to detect impatience, defensiveness, and selfishness in others while remaining oblivious to these same tendencies within ourselves. Consider the manager who criticizes a colleague for being controlling while simultaneously micromanaging their own team without awareness. This psychological blind spot functions as the primary barrier to authentic transformation. Hall introduces responsibility thresholds, the boundary between what our ego can tolerate acknowledging and what it must deny. Most of us accept blame for minor issues like arriving late to a meeting, yet deflect responsibility for significant personal failures or relationship breakdowns that threaten our self-image. These patterns of blame manifest in everyday interactions. The partner who accuses their spouse of emotional unavailability might be avoiding their own fear of vulnerability. These patterns create barriers to authentic connection, as relationships built on mutual blame lack the essential foundation of vulnerability and truth.
The path toward awareness requires contemplative practices that address these projections. Hall emphasizes examining ourselves without self-condemnation, developing the courage to acknowledge our shortcomings with compassion. Through quiet introspection, journal writing, and genuine curiosity about our reactions in moments of conflict, we create space for awareness to develop and relationships to transform. Beyond self-reflection lies the domain of practical action, where ancient wisdom meets modern psychology in dismantling what neuroscientists now call the blame reflex, an unconscious protective mechanism so deeply encoded in our nervous system that it activates before conscious thought can intervene.
What if a simple pause could transform conflict into growth? When someone criticizes us, our identity feels threatened, and within milliseconds, our nervous system activates protection. Blood flows away from our prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, and into our limbic system, preparing us for psychological battle. This explains why even the most spiritually minded individuals can suddenly become entangled in defensive reactions contrary to their highest values. Hall's teachings emphasize developing discipline in that microscopic space between stimulus and response. This interval, sometimes merely a fraction of a second, contains the crucial moment of spiritual choice. The practice begins with intentionally pausing when triggered, creating a momentary sanctuary where consciousness can reassert itself before the blame reflex takes control.
Once we've mastered the pause, we can implement specific techniques like responsibility language, transform accusatory you statements into reflective I statements. Instead of "you always interrupt me," say "I feel frustrated when I'm unable to complete my thoughts." This subtle shift performs remarkable alchemy in conversations, reducing defensiveness.
Try ownership journaling. Document situations where blame arose naturally, then consciously reframe them through the lens of personal responsibility. This practice doesn't deny others' actions, but focuses on our responses, gradually reprogramming our default reactions. The learning question. In moments of conflict, ask, "What can I learn from this?" This inquiry transmutes grievance into growth, shifting consciousness from past-oriented blame to future-oriented development.
Stephen Covey's circle of influence provides the final piece of this framework. By focusing our energy exclusively on what we can control, our thoughts, words, and actions, rather than external circumstances, we naturally break free from blame's gravitational pull. This concentration of energy within our sphere of influence paradoxically expands that sphere over time, increasing our impact. As we concentrate on what lies within our control, we participate in a spiritual science far older than modern psychology. The ancient alchemists spoke of transforming lead into gold, a process mirrored in our inner work when we transmute the dense heaviness of painful experiences into the luminous wisdom of responsibility. This transformation requires us to enter the fire of discomfort that most instinctively avoid. The spiritual path Hall describes represents a profound metamorphosis of consciousness. His vision of the evolved human being includes one who has transcended the limitations of blame entirely, embracing complete responsibility as the key to spiritual development. When we fully own our experiences, particularly the painful ones, we initiate a sacred transmutation within consciousness itself, like a sculptor chiseling away at resistant stone to reveal the masterpiece hidden within. This alchemical process is challenging. The vulnerability associated with taking responsibility represents a genuine trial that individuals naturally shy away from. Yet facing this discomfort constitutes an essential crucible for spiritual evolution. In our modern world of instant gratification and blame shifting,
This ancient practice offers a revolutionary path to authentic power. When we avoid responsibility, we simultaneously avoid the transformative fire that refines our consciousness. In various spiritual traditions, responsibility as devotion emerges as a profound practice. Taking ownership transforms into a form of spiritual worship, an alignment with higher principles that connects us with our highest potential. History provides luminous examples in figures like Gandhi and Mandela, who demonstrated how personal accountability amid extreme adversity catalyzes profound transformation. Hall describes a gradual expansion of awareness as we take responsibility for increasingly subtle aspects of our experiences. This progression represents a spiritual journey toward greater consciousness. Several practices strengthen our capacity for this transformative work. Presence meditation, contemplative practices, self-examination, and service to others all cultivate the soil in which responsibility flourishes. This path offers an alchemical promise, the transformation of suffering into wisdom. Our most painful experiences contain the essential elements for our greatest spiritual growth, transmuting the lead of pain into the gold of wisdom. The wisdom gained through responsibility's alchemy unlocks a door few ever discover. What awaits on the other side of this threshold is nothing less than total liberation, a radical shift in consciousness where external circumstances no longer dictate your inner state. This is the self-mastery that ancient traditions have whispered about for millennia, and that Hall illuminates as the culmination of spiritual development. Like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, those who master responsibility awaken each morning with the profound awareness that they create their experience. This represents the natural state of one who fully embraces responsibility. Meanwhile, those ensnared in blame consciousness experience life as a series of reactions to external forces. Their serenity depends entirely on favorable conditions, making authentic happiness forever beyond reach.
Hall presents self-mastery as the ultimate spiritual achievement, the capacity to navigate life's storms while maintaining your inner compass. Just as a skilled captain adjusts sails during tempests rather than cursing the wind, the responsible person steers toward purpose regardless of conditions. Hall suggests that problems cannot exist in a life that has clarified its own purposes, revealing how responsibility dissolves conflicts that plague most lives. This transformation heals the fabric of your relationships. When you cease projecting responsibility outward, others relate to you differently. Connections previously defined by recrimination transform into partnerships built on mutual accountability. Family dynamics that seemed cemented in place begin to evolve as your refusal to participate in blame disrupts generational patterns.
Responsibility-centered consciousness generates profound inner peace. As Hall observes, happiness must be earned, suggesting that contentment emerges from ownership rather than circumstance. The vigilance required to maintain victimhood dissolves, replaced by self-trust and inner authority. Hall's concept of creative responsibility moves beyond accepting what is to shaping what could be. If we can build a good future, he notes, we may also have the genius to accumulate a bad one, highlighting choice's power in crafting destiny. This transforms responsibility from burden to sacred privilege, connecting you with your highest spiritual potential, the journey from imprisonment to freedom.
As we conclude our exploration of Hall's wisdom, we arrive at a fundamental truth that transcends time and tradition. The universe mirrors our responses to circumstances. When Hall states, "The universe responds not to what happens to you, but to how you respond to what happens," he invites us to participate consciously in the creation of our reality. This principle liberates us from external conditions and places transformation firmly in our hands.
In your journey forward, ask yourself, how will I transform this challenge into spiritual growth? Hall's insight that happiness must be earned reminds us that fulfillment comes not through perfect circumstances, but through awakened choices. Imagine each obstacle before you transforming into a doorway of wisdom when met with conscious response. This is your path to spiritual sovereignty, where every challenge becomes not just an experience, but an opportunity for profound transformation. Until next time, beautiful people, trust the journey, embrace the mystery, and live in the now.